Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here is a preview of some of today's top stories. Thousands killed since the start of the war began between Israel and Hamas terrorists. New reports show Hamas now launching attacks on displaced people. The international ATM skimming operation ended in arrests. An organized crime group stole thousands of credit card numbers over the years. A new weight loss drug soon to hit the U.S. market. The company predicts $2 billion in potential sales revenue. First, an update on yesterday's shooting at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. The school said earlier today that the gunman targeted faculty members. Identified as 67-year-old Anthony Polito, law enforcement say he had applied to be a professor at the university but did not get the job. School officials said no students were killed in the shooting and all 4 victims were faculty members. 3 died and 1 is in the hospital under stable conditions. Of the deceased victims, 2 have been publicly identified. They are 64-year-old Professor Cha-Chang Chang, known as Jerry, and 39-year-old Assistant Professor Patricia Navarro Velez. The 3rd victim has been identified, but officials are working to notify the next of kin first. Authorities haven't identified the type of weapon used or a motive yet. It's now been 2 months since the war began between Israel and Hamas terrorists. Thousands of people have been killed and many more have been displaced. It now appears that Hamas is launching attacks alongside those displaced people. NTD's Jason Perry reports.
Israel Defense Forces on Thursday released a video showing Hamas terrorists operating within a residential neighborhood in the Gaza Strip, and one of the terrorists fired an anti-tank missile. The IDF then directed a precision aerial strike at the terrorists. Meanwhile, Hamas released its own video just the day before, showing terrorists making their way through destroyed buildings before focusing on what appear to be Israeli tanks in several locations. The video highlights the tanks in red before the terrorists fired on them. Hamas, which is known for using civilians as human shields in residential areas and hospitals, has now taken things a step further, as said by the Israeli government spokesperson.
Hamas has shifted to launching attacks on the Israeli people from within the designated humanitarian zone. Hamas terrorists launched 12 missiles towards the Israeli city of Beersheba from inside the Al-Mawasi humanitarian zone, launching those missiles from near the tents of evacuated Gazan civilians and from right next to United Nations facilities, as you can see in the aerial images that the army has supplied.
The IDF then struck the launch site. But looking beyond the safe zones and battle zones, the Gazan people were already relying heavily on humanitarian aid to survive, even before the war, according to the United Nations.
Yes, there is aid that comes in, but it isn't enough at all. It isn't enough for the families.
On Wednesday, the UN said that although humanitarian aid trucks have been entering Gaza from Egypt, the UN staff has had difficulty distributing the aid since the ceasefire ended last week. Israel, on the other hand, said this.
Today we can expect up to 250 trucks every day in Nitzana. And as I said, the problem is not Nitzana. The problem is the capability of the UN agencies to collect all the international assistance that, after we are checking it, goes to Rafah. This is the main problem.
Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, high school students decorated menorahs on the first eve of Hanukkah for the 138 hostages still held captive by Hamas.
It feels not very good this year because this year there are a lot of anti-Semitism and people want to kill us, so we need to fight back.
It's now been 2 months since Hamas terrorists crossed into Israeli territory and killed over 1,200 innocent people. That terrorist act started the war between Israel and Hamas. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Now let's take a look at other national headlines. A New York appeals court ruled in favor of the Trump Organization on Thursday while the Manhattan civil fraud trial proceeds. Former President Trump was back in court earlier today. He again criticized New York Attorney General Letitia James before going in to watch a witness testify for him. Eli Bartov, an accounting professor at New York University, is the Trump team's second to last witness. He is testifying to try to boost Trump's argument that his family business didn't manipulate the values of its holdings. Before going to the courtroom, Trump called the non-jury New York civil trial against him and his business a, quote, weaponization of justice, and bashed the proceedings and lawsuit as election interference. The House of Representatives formally reprimanded Congressman Jamal Bowman this morning over his pulling of a fire alarm earlier this year. The House voted largely along party lines, 214 to 191, to censure Bowman. 3 Democrats voted with Republicans. On September 30th, Bowman pulled the alarm despite no immediate threat of a fire in the middle of a floor vote aimed at preventing a government shutdown. Chaos briefly broke out in the Cannon House office building on the Capitol complex when the fire alarm rang out, forcing the building to be evacuated. Video and eyewitness testimony soon revealed that it had been pulled by Bowman. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charge in late October and agreed to pay the maximum $1,000 fine. A Texas woman is allowed to get an abortion. Texas law bans abortions except to save the mother's life or prevent a substantial impairment of a major bodily function. The ruling is a temporary order allowing the abortion before the case can be fully considered. The woman, Kate Cox, said that her fetus was diagnosed with a genetic abnormality that usually results in miscarriage or death soon after birth. She filed the lawsuit on Tuesday. Cox said because she had 2 previous cesarean sections, she would need to have a third one if she continues the pregnancy, which could jeopardize her ability to have more children. She said that she and her husband wanted to have more children in the future.
The idea that Miss Cox wants desperately to be a parent, and this law might actually cause her to lose that ability is shocking and would be a genuine miscarriage of justice. So I will be signing the order and it will be processed and sent out today.
Today in history, Hawaii marks the 82nd anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. Survivor Ira Shab returned to Hawaii Naval Base 82 years after Japan's bombing propelled the U.S. into World War II.
I'm just mighty grateful that I'm still here. That's really how it feels. Grateful.
Shab was a sailor on board the USS Dublin when the attack happened. Shab, now 103, is one of just 6 survivors at the remembrance ceremony for more than 2,300 servicemen killed on December 7, 1941. The aging pool of Pearl Harbor survivors has been rapidly shrinking. There is now just 1 crew member of the USS Arizona still living, 102-year-old Lou Conter of California. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs doesn't have statistics for how many Pearl Harbor survivors are still living. The international ATM skimming operation has ended in arrests after 3 years. Authorities found that the organized crime group stole credit card numbers through a variety of skimming equipment, hidden cameras, and other tools.
Romanian law enforcement and the FBI's Los Angeles field office collaborated on Thanksgiving Day to crack down on an organized crime group engaged in ATM skimming and money laundering. The joint operation was conducted in 84 locations in Romania over the span of 3 years. They found hidden cameras, skimming equipment, fraudulent cards, and other tools used to conduct the illegal scheme. Agents and prosecutors have recovered over 8,000 stolen credit card numbers belonging to U.S. victims and seized nearly $1 million in cash and cryptocurrency as a result of their ongoing efforts to disrupt ATM skimmers in Southern California. Romanian law enforcement arrested 48 suspects and seized 11 vehicles. The Central District of California has charged them with conspiracy, bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, and visa fraud. Many of the suspects worked directly for or were associated with Florian Tudor. He is notorious for leading an ATM skimming organization based out of Cancun, Mexico. Tudor is awaiting trial in Mexico on fraud charges and is facing charges for attempted murder in Romania.
Eli Lilly has launched Zepbound in U.S. pharmacies. The company enters the booming weight loss market with a potential $2 billion sales projection. NTD's Stephanie Sikal reports.
Eli Lilly has introduced its newly approved obesity drug Zepbound in U.S. pharmacies, entering the rapidly growing weight loss market. The drug's cost varies based on health insurance coverage, with uninsured individuals potentially paying $550 monthly, while insured individuals may pay as little as $25. The weight loss drug market is expected to reach $100 billion by the end of the decade. Analysts project Zepbound's 2024 sales at $2 billion, comparing it to Novo Nordisk's Wegovy, predicted to make $7.3 billion in 2024. Both drugs were originally designed for type 2 diabetes. Eli Lilly's stock has surged 60% this year, making it the 10th most valuable public company by market capitalization. Stephanie Sikal, NTD News.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. One Hawaii island wants visitors to pay for rescues. Locals hope this will encourage tourists to obey warning signs and avoid getting into dangerous situations. A bird flu outbreak prompts a California county to declare it in a state of emergency. Hundreds of thousands of birds would be euthanized. A teenage promise turns dream come true. A young man builds and gifts his wife her dream house. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. The Hawaiian island Kauai is known for its natural scenery and leisure, but rescuing visitors has become a financial burden. Now the county is asking that they pay up.
The Kauai Council voted on a new bill, 2910, on December 6th that will have visitors pay for their own rescue if it exceeds $1,000. Locals hope this will deter people from ignoring warning signs and acting irresponsibly.
People got to start taking responsibility for their actions and putting our first responders at risk. That is my biggest concern. The disregard for that, to me, there is no excuse. And, you know, again, it's personal for me. I lost a couple friends in a rescue on Oahu in conditions that those people should not have gone up hiking, and they did. And 3 people died. And there's no real consequence. So
he is aware that there is a stigma around charging for rescues. For example, even if people know they will need to pay, Raposo said people will still call for help, like calling for 911. But one council member has a different view.
I wouldn't want to lose one of them or have their families lose their home for their poor judgment that is part of the nature of what makes somebody willing to hang from a helicopter to go drag somebody else out. The very people that are going to put themselves in that position at 13 years old are the very ones who are going to pull the next person out at 33 years old. So that's just my discomfort with all of this.
Under the bill, if the resources that go into rescuing someone is over $1,000, the county attorney will decide if they will pursue reimbursement to be paid off in 30 days. Most of the public present during the meeting supported the bill.
I think that no matter who gets injured, the person should be charged. Even the kids, the parents have to pay. They're not raising their kids responsibly if they get into something that endangers public officials.
A tourist hotspot called the Queen's Bath has been closed because of the number of rescues made there. Officials say that in one case, a bill turned out to be $5,000, but they couldn't get the money because it is hard to track down visitors after they return home from vacation. In an email statement to NTD, the Kauai Fire Department Chief Michael Gibson said, "This bill and its amendments provide the opportunity for persons willing to make donations towards search and rescue. In the past, we have had people who were so thankful to be rescued offer to make substantial donations. They were familiar with other places in the country with similar programs. Rescues can involve helicopters, fire engines, and other personnel."
A bird flu emergency was proclaimed in a California county on Tuesday. In order to control the outbreak, hundreds of thousands of birds will be euthanized. NTD's Jason Blair has more.
Sonoma County in Northern California is the latest area in the U.S. to be affected by the bird flu.
And proclaiming a local emergency due to the existence of the avian influenza.
250,000 birds will be euthanized at 2 farms in the area, with the possibility of more. An avian flu outbreak has been ongoing globally since 2020. It first hit the U.S. in early 2022. Besides California, Arkansas, Ohio, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Colorado have recently been affected. Experts are expecting the outbreak will result in higher egg prices. Quarantines and euthanizing flocks are the main measures used to control outbreaks. It spreads primarily through wild birds, most often waterfowl like ducks and geese. The flu poses low risk to human infection, and people are encouraged to report any unusual sickness or death in birds to state or local animal health departments. Jason Blair, NTD News.
A new California law is putting attorneys in a pinch who are trying to prove themselves not guilty of being discriminatory towards a juror. One attorney says while the law is designed to eliminate implicit bias, it is actually making it more difficult to work on a case.
Nicole Castronovo, a trial attorney, is fighting the new controversial California state law, AB 3070. She explains to California Insider's Siamak Karami what the law was like before, called the Batson-Wheeler Law.
It said that an attorney cannot intentionally basically discriminate and excuse a juror based on a reason such as their ethnicity. And it was presumed before that, you're excusing for a lawful reason. So say I excused a juror myself, the other attorney could then challenge my cause and say, I think that Ms. Castronovo is excusing for an improper reason. And then the burden would be on the other attorney to show the court that I was excusing for an improper reason.
But that changed when Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 3070 into law in 2020, which was enacted in 2022. Its purpose is to eliminate implicit bias in jury selection by requiring attorneys who use peremptory challenges to prove it.
Say you were nodding off while I'm presenting my case, which happens regularly during jury selection. People get bored, they get tired, they zone out. And I were to say, you know what, I think I'm going to excuse juror number 2 because he's not paying attention. This is a very critical case for my client. I need 12 people that are paying attention. Now the other attorney could say, well, Ms. Castronovo is not just excusing him because he's inattentive. It's really because he's Iranian. It's because of his ethnicity, and it places the burden on me.
To prove that you are not doing it based on race.
Yes.
Castronovo says now the standard under AB 3070 is called clear and convincing evidence, which is unfair because it would make it difficult for her to prove that she was not excusing for reasons like discrimination. AB 3070 applies to criminal trials in California and will apply to civil trials in 2026.
The best gifts come from the heart. Here's a story of a teenage promise turned reality. A young man builds and gifts his wife the home of her dreams, proving that some wishes really do come true.
Stay-at-home mom turned social media influencer Brittany Smith now lives with her husband, Mark Smith, and their 2 kids in South Carolina. The couple met in high school. As a child who grew up in old homes, Mrs. Smith told the Epoch Times, I have a deep-rooted love and appreciation of old character and architecture. Often, and still to this day, one of our favorite things to do is to go riding around together in older established neighborhoods and basically gawk at the architecture and designs of older historic homes. On one of those drives, she expressed her wish to renovate an old house to live in. At that time, Mr. Smith said, "How about this? One day I will build you a brand new house, but it will look old, just like these houses you love." 15 years after Mr. Smith's promise, the couple got married and later bought the perfect piece of land near the water. They soon got to work on their dream home. The exterior is reminiscent of early 20th century houses. The couple aimed for historical accuracy, but some decisions had to prioritize lifestyle over aesthetics, such as the kitchen. After 16 months of building, the family moved in September 2018. Mrs. Smith reflected on the journey, saying, "It was like a literal dream, a sweet and innocent promise that my now husband made so many years ago was a reality now." She says her husband showed a sincere and selfless form of love, adding that her favorite places in the home are where her family can come together.
That's all we've got for you tonight. We would like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.